Welcome back, everybody, to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have an exceptional guest who is at the forefront of revenue generation and sales strategy. Please welcome Trevor. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Vivun. With over 20 years of experience in sales and revenue management, Trevor is dedicated to leveraging AI to optimize revenue growth. Trevor, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you here. Can you start by telling us about Vivun and your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. And a pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me on. Yeah, I head up the revenue function here at Vivun. We are an AI sales assistant. So we are an agent that basically does all of the hard work in the messy middle of the sales process. So we listen into gong calls, read emails, any other source that we can hydrate from, and we will go and build out all of the things that your AEs and SEs don't want to spend the time doing. Hand off documents, value cases, executive summaries. We will build all that in the background and allow you to have an assistant standing by that you can go in and interrogate and ask questions about your deal.
This is good stuff. And we know that we're going to need as many agents that do this work as possible so that folks can continue to grow their revenue. Can we dive right on in here? So you've got this extensive experience in sales and revenue management. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you believe is the most critical element for organizations to succeed in driving revenue growth today.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is timing. So making sure that whatever it is that you're bringing to market at the right time. AI is particularly sensitive to that because we are in a different place now than we were 6 months ago. Our understanding in the market, what it is, what it isn't. 12 months ago, it was a completely different thing. And we were worried about how AI was going to be taking people's jobs. And that was a big concern. And some of the early demonstrations that we had at Vivun, that was some of the response we had. It was like, are you coming for my job? Now things have matured, things have calmed down, people understand. So the timing is a really important part of that. But other than that, it goes back to some of the original basics. Like you need to be driving value in a way that is going to materially impact your organization. The old adage of it, if it doesn't increase revenue, decrease cost, or just materially change the way that you operate, it shouldn't get done. And that's been my guiding principle since somebody told me that about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I really like that. So it sounds like what you're saying is it's really important to align whatever it is you're doing from a sales go-to-market perspective with what a customer might actually need, thereby value being clear. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think that this alignment impacts revenue generation and overall business success?
I think if it doesn't impact the revenue generation, then whatever it is that you're selling is going to have a challenge. But the thing that's interesting about technology today is some of the things that maybe don't directly impact, but are changing the way that we do business. AI is a particularly good example. In my own experience here, I've started using AI, our own tools that we sell, and just ChatGPT and Claude and others that the expectation for how fast things get done and the quality of the things that you do, irrespective of what your role is has changed quite a bit. And so that's going to be the new standard now. If someone's like, we want to do this, the PowerPoint, the Google slide doc should come out immediately, not a week from now. And so if you're whatever business you're in, if you're not doing that, somebody's going to get to your revenue faster than you do. So the speed of things and the expectation for quality and thoroughness has changed quite a bit.
In this idea of quality, because I know if I get something, it's got some misspellings and stuff in it. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you run that through? We no longer have to worry just about the human eye on these things. Trevor, do you have a framework for making high stakes decisions, especially when you don't have all the information?
It's pretty loose. I'm kind of old school in that and strangely coming from a business intelligence background, my first sales in corporate sales was selling business intelligence, so like dashboarding and metrics and KPIs and balanced scorecards. A big part of my growing up in the corporate world. But I think you balance that with the things that are just like basic, like doesn't make sense, and that you have to look at both. I can use fun with numbers to justify any bad decision that I want to make. But if it doesn't make sense, then I'm not gonna do it. So, especially today, you can put together a numerical model to support just about everything, but, like, is it really gonna move the needle? Are people going to adopt it? Is it going to be successful? Can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, like, "Really? Like, are we gonna do that? Does that make sense?" So, I think managing those 2, there's not necessarily a framework as much as, like, I need both data, just common sense to, balancing those 2 is the way that I look at things.
Yeah, I like this. You're kind of ruining our last segment right now, but that's okay. We'll do it anyway. But no, this is a lot of the story that we're often trying to tell people about decision making is it's a balanced effort. It requires things that we know we've seen before, right? Our gut, that human expertise that develops over the course of time. I sat in a room, I saw it happen. I know this is real. How I take the right data, put it in the right places to make sense, completely makes sense. So you haven't said anything that's super odd. Imagine you've made a decision and now you've got to actually track outcomes of those major decisions you've made. How do you do that? How do you track whether or not you've made the right decision or not?
Yeah, I mean, that you have to go back to numbers as well. So you really need a strong framework there, and then make sure that the numbers are reliable and that you can actually get to them. Just yesterday, we were making an important decision on product direction and go to market direction here. And one of the things that we ran up against was the thing that we're going to use to decide whether this thing went this way or went that way is going to be based on some determination that's not, it's kind of squishy. And so, we really wanted to make sure we went back and we build some rigor into that process so that we can capture that information. And that requires that the people involved in that process have that ability to capture. They understand what it is that they're capturing because we're going to be making some decisions on that data. And that was the biggest part of the conversation, was just making sure that we were able to capture the measurement.
Look at that, y'all. No squishy metrics. No one wants squishy metrics. So there's got to be firmed up. That's kind of what I just heard. Are there any particular metrics that you find to be the most concrete? Specifically, let's maybe think about your sales initiatives. Are there any metrics that you're like, yeah, these are the ones almost every time?
If you're talking about from a sales leader perspective, it's pretty easy. How well you're doing depends on, which metrics you're being measured by. So ultimately, you're driving dollars, you're driving revenue. And I always tell people, like, if I can hold you accountable to those dollars, then great. Now we've got a really easy relationship and an easy conversation. If I need to peel that back and see how you got to those dollars by closing deals, which deals, how many deals did you get into, how many deals did you convert from stage to stage to stage, how many calls did you make, what do you know and how well do you do these things? Like, the further back you go, probably the more in trouble you are as a contributor, as a salesperson, that I need to go back and measure. I really don't want to go back and measure how many emails you made. If we're doing that, then we've probably got a problem. So going back to the ultimate, like, making sure you understand the path of those numbers is important. And likewise, if someone else calls up some of those numbers in the middle, I want to make sure that I'm not going to waste calories there. Classic sales management, where someone above you will come in and say, like, if you could only convert your stage 2 to stage 3 by, like, 0.5%, like, yeah, I'm not gonna eat that meal. It's just,
Yeah.
those are all carbs, and it's it's not gonna get me anywhere.
I want to stay right here for just a moment because I'm really interested in that little space where you need to know how the numbers got to be the numbers. Tell me a little bit more about why you need to know that. Why is that so important to know the path?
I think ultimately because if we're not getting the number on the end, like, if you're a sales rep and you are not hitting your number, or if you are, however you're measured by the ultimate contribution to the organization, if you're not getting there, then we need to peel back trace the cord back to the wall and see how you got there, how you're not getting there. And so if we build upon that, then we know, like, all right, we can find the source of the problem. And if we can get to the numbers and you can find that source of the problem, now we can make a correction so that you're doing the right things. A lot of times that's the numbers will take you there. Sometimes it's market timing. Sometimes your product just isn't selling. So when I look at the numbers, I keep using the sales example because that's what I do. But, like, if I'm looking at an individual contributor, a person on my sales team, and I've got 10 people on my sales team, and hopefully I've balanced them out so they're all operating on the same plane. I'll be able to say, if everybody's not hitting their number, it's not them, it's something else. If one person's not hitting their number, but everybody else is, making sure that everything else is the same, then I know I've got a problem with that person. So the numbers by themselves can be deceiving if you don't really appreciate the context.
That's right. So thank you for mentioning that. That's where I was going. This idea of context to me is ultimately one of the most important bits of information that's often missing in the decision making process. And if you don't have it, it could lead you down the wrong path. We need to know why, because we have to be able to problem solve, and we also need to be able to have it be repeatable. So let's say I find something that really works and it's good. If I don't know the path, then I'm not likely going to be able to repeat it. Let's keep going here. So as Vivun continues to grow, how do you actually make sure that your sales team is continuously developing and adapting to meet changing market demands, particularly in this kind of tech driven environment?
That's one of those things that's especially today that changes all of the time. So making sure that we have a system in place that can do that. But in smaller companies moving towards larger companies, I think there's a thing that you have to do around scaling up. So like you get into a guerrilla warfare setting in the beginning where you're like, I'm just going to do everything I can to get this customer, prove value, make them successful, make it work. And then from there, scaling and making it repeatable is an entirely different motion. So that comes from picking the right fights to go get into. I'm going to go pick the right customers. I'm going to go pick the right deals because you can waste an infinite amount of time if you just get that wrong. So making sure that you've set yourself up for success. The deals that you do in the beginning of a company are not the deals that you do 5 years in or 10 years in necessarily.
This is good. So, by the way, I really appreciate your ability to develop an analogy.
Think of analogies. I'm holding back on the analogies.
So we've got a few here today. I hope you guys have been paying attention. For our audience, I want you to think about your experiences with revenue generation. What kind of strategies have you implemented that have significantly impacted your sales performance? Share your thoughts with us on LinkedIn and other social media using Dynamic Decisions podcast. I want to move now, Trevor, into what we call the leadership segment. So we're going to focus a little bit on your role, Chief Revenue Officer. What kind of strategies have you brought forth that actually build up the culture of accountability and continuous improvement within your sales team?
Yes. Actually, I had this conversation today because I had the pleasure of promoting an SDR, a sales development rep, into an account executive position.
Let's go. Congratulations. What's his name?
Eric Salvo.
Congratulations, Eric.
That's a big deal. Like that's an inflection point in your career,
Yeah.
and that's big. So he was super excited. Obviously, we made his day doing that, and he earned every bit of that. But the conversation that I have when you're now part of my team is that we have business to do, but business is personal. And the people we work with, we have a personal relationship with. We need to define exactly how that's going to work. I look at it. I lived in New York, New Jersey for a while. I kind of like take on a little bit of a mafia style approach. I'm like, now you're in the family, but like, here are the rules. This is how this thing of ours operates. Like, I'm going to look after you. So I told Eric, you're now in my stewardship. So now I'm responsible for your success. I'm going to make sure that you are successful. I'm going to have your back. I'm going to defend you. I'm going to make sure that nobody speaks ill of you, and that if things start to go haywire, if you're not producing for whatever reason, like I'm going to give you advance notice and make sure that nobody's surprised. And likewise, I expect you to have my back. I don't expect loyalty means that you're going to stay working at this company for 10 years, but you're going to stay loyal to me and being honest and contributing all that you have. And I will do the same for you. If we can establish that as a baseline, then on top of that, we can do just about anything.
So based on this, I'm assuming that you get high levels of collaboration. How do you take that you've built within your team and actually help to build up collaboration between now your sales team and other departments at Vivun?
I mean, that's the thing that you have to be able to run the entire organization in a compatible way with everybody else. I'm a firm believer that there shouldn't be a chain of command hierarchy in an organization. Like everyone should feel free to go to any other level within the organization with some like I guess a little bit of etiquette, just making sure that you know who with whom you're communicating and so forth. Part of that too is just representing my team. And you're part of my organization. I expect you to behave this way, and these are the things that I expect you to do for your cousins and brothers and sisters and the rest of the organization. And here's the things that I expect you to not do. And a lot of those are behavioral, and a lot of those just go back to the values of the company and values of my team. Making sure that somebody understands that their actions reflect upon you is really important. It's something that you actually need to remind people of sometimes that they may not know that right out of the gate. And a lot of that's kind of generational too. Like those mores have changed over time from where they were, and a lot of things that I knew growing up working in the 80s and 90s, um, I've had to kind of make sure like, hey, here's here's some good things from that era that we need to incorporate.
What's hard about this? Like, what are the difficulties in this kind of collaboration?
Understanding where the boundaries are, I think in a way that will make sure we're not stepping on feet and making sure that we can all get to the ultimate goal together. People can
Mm.
have clashes with each other on a personality basis and all of that. And I expect that you're a professional, you can get by that. But just making sure that you know what I'm working on, I know what you're working on, I know what we're working on together. The last thing you want is a surprise about like, well, I was supposed to be on this. So just communication about that, especially in a smaller organization where those things aren't defined. In a larger organization, when you're in a company with tens or hundreds of thousands of people, you're almost overly defined in those things, and you should probably loosen them up a little bit.
So I've got this book. It's the 2025 HBR's must reads. And so in it are these ideas in brief. So I want to kind of share one with you and get your thoughts and kind of have you break it down in as much as you can. So it's broken down into a problem, a root cause, and a suggested remedy. Okay. So here's the problem that it states: virtually all organizations are plagued by addition sickness. The unnecessary rules, procedures, communications, tools, and roles that just seem to grow. They stifle productivity and creativity. It claims here that the root cause is people default to asking, what can I add here, not what can I get rid of? Organizations reward leaders for additions, implementing new technology, for example, launching initiatives, building bigger fiefdoms. And leaders often have limited grasp of their cone of friction, how their actions and decisions burden others. It claims that the remedy is conduct a good riddance review to identify obstacles that can and should be removed, and employ subtraction tools to eliminate those obstacles or make it difficult for people to erect them in the first place. I'd love to get your take.
That's pretty interesting. I think a lot of this has evolved over the years as well. And I've worked for large, old companies where a lot of it was standard operating procedure, where the entire organization is set up around your standard operating procedure. Here's what you do, and here's how you do it in the form in which you do it, and here's what you think about when you do it, and here's what you're wearing when you do it. And like I just think that in my own experience, I couldn't deal well with that. I think if you focused more on the outcomes that are expected, the how you get there requires a lot less guardrail to get there. So I think, and I always say the same thing to this happens in sales all the time too, where there's a lot of metrics for salespeople. Like I'm gonna put all these dashboards together to define if you're doing it right as an AE, because you're saying this on this day in this part of the sales cycle, and this number is higher than this number, but lower than this number. I don't look at any of it. Honestly, I think that's all a mess. I'm going to hold people to account to their outcomes for the
Yeah.
individual stages. This is the important part. I don't want to build robots. And this is interesting because I've been saying that since the 90s. But now, like, I can build robots. I can go build an AI agent that'll do things. I don't want that. I want humans to be humans. And if Bob does it this way and Sally does it that way, that's the magic. And that's why I hired Bob and Sally. I'm going to hold them according to the outcomes, but like the rest of it and here's how you should be doing it and what you should be saying. If I have to tell them that, then one of us is in the wrong place.
Even when you build a robot, you're not going to build a robot to be like a robot. You're going to build a robot to be like a human. And so you're going to be looking for outcomes from that robot too. So you're just going to use the robotness to tell the robot what to do.
Correct. Correct. Not just human.
Good stuff. That's good. I really appreciate that, because when it comes to decision making, even when all of the repeatable and mundane tasks are taken by the robot, you're going to need human perspective in order to create something new. And decision making a lot of times has to do with producing new thoughts, right? You have, and then being able to put those things in the right place. So that totally makes sense to me. Hey, let's move to my favorite part, which is where I try to assess your decision making style, even though you've already kind of ruined it because you were so awesome at the first part of this, that this exercise is just going to seem like for naught. but it's what we do here on Dynamic Decisions. So ask you 4 questions, and these 4 questions are presented in the way that a particular persona would say the question. And you're going to say on a scale of 0 to 100% how much it resonates with you. You get 4 questions, 0 to 100% on each question. However, across all 4, you only get 100%.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Because
They
of
have to add up to
course,
100%.
I have to add up to 100% because I like to make it complicated. That's like a trait of mine. Here we go. We're considering a new sales strategy. How do we make sure that it aligns with our core values and enhances the customer experience?
Okay.
Where are you on that one?
I mean, I agree with it 100%, but I also feel like it goes without saying. So I feel like I don't wanna spend so much of my 100% on that because that's just how it should be. But, yeah, I mean, I'll give that its appropriate, 25% for right now.
Okay, here's your next one. That's called a feeler, by the way. That's the feeler persona. So a lot of gut in there, which we could have guessed, right? A lot of instinct, expertise, experience tends to lead to feeling. Here's your next one. We're reflecting on last year's sales initiatives. What specific trends or insights have we uncovered that can significantly influence our next strategies?
Yeah, I like that one. I'd give that one a 50%.
Okay.
I get to reorder these at the end?
You can if you'd like. Absolutely. That's the planner persona. Here we go. So we're evaluating our previous sales challenges or previous sales changes. What key lessons have we learned that fundamentally change our decision making?
That one, makes me feel like someone's about to get fired.
Could be.
That's one I would try to avoid, because I feel like that's, yeah, I feel like there's an outcome there that I want to avoid. So I'm gonna give that one 10%.
Percent. That one's called a counter. So I think you're right. If you're just counting it up, then it's highly probable that you're making decisions without other stuff. Okay, here we go. Here's your last one. So now we're formulating new sales strategies. What specific data points are we going to rely on to validate our decisions?
There we go. I like that one. I would reorder my answers and give that one a much higher number because
Okay.
I like that one.
So that's the data driver. So let's see, what's your reorder? How do you want to reorder them?
I would probably, take the 50% from number 2 and take that down to 25, and then give that 40% there to question number 4.
All right. So you've got 25% feeler, 25% planner, 10% counter, and 40% data driver. Congratulations. That's pretty good. So these personas, the idea is that decision making should be balanced, right? We know that in different times and points, not only in our career but in the decision making process, you might rely more heavily on different types of data gathering. And so this is an example of how you might tell a team, hey team, I like to get that data drive. So when you bring me ideas or you bring me things that you want to do, use some of this good stuff in order to help me to formulate whether or not I'm going to say yes. So let's keep moving here. My last question
What's
for
the
you.
ideal score? I gotta ask. I'm a
You said what's
goal-oriented
the
person. Yeah, what's the maximum to like, is it supposed to be 25 each, or what do you like as the best?
ideally you're 25 each, right? But most people are not because we're all built differently. And the other thing is you're 25 each in general. However, different moments require different things. And I've been learning a lot on this podcast from my listeners in how they perceive the feeler, the very first one, right? So many people, especially the more experienced they are, they tend to have much higher feeler. And that makes sense because you sit in the room, you see something 50 times, you're like, nah, I'm pretty certain of it. So,
Except
yeah, I totally get it. But it's just kind of a cool exercise to see where people are. So, here's our last question for you. So, I thank you so much for that. Our last question is if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring leader in sales and revenue management, what would it be?
I'll go with the classic, and that's manage your relationships for the long term. This was something that was taught to me. Assume that the people that you're gonna be working with today are the people that you're going to be working with in some capacity 20 years from now. Choose your words and your behaviors accordingly. You never know who that person's going to be. You never know who you're going to be. You never know how you're going to need them or they're going to need you. And I think that provides a little humility and empathy in the way that you work with people. If you expect, like, I might need to call this person in 20 years to get a job, or, maybe I'm going to start a company with them. So manage past the firm that you're with and make sure that you manage your own brand ahead of the firm that you're with. Don't let any decisions that are being made about your job impact what people are going to say about you personally. Your brand is more important than the company you're with.
That's good stuff right there. Thank you so, so much, Trevor. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. Your expertise in driving revenue growth is actually inspiring. Wondering if you can share with our listeners where they can learn more about you and Vivun.
Yeah, I'd love if anybody finds me on LinkedIn, Trevor Jett, or come visit us at vivun.com, Vivun, and learn about the cool things we're doing. I guarantee you we're way ahead of anything you've heard about in AI. And if you take a look, it's pretty exciting stuff.
Wonderful. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, rate it, share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.